Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for Shorts Block of When I Grow Up. We have all of our amazing filmmakers here with us right now to have our virtual Q&A. I hope you'll enjoy the block. My name is Alyssa Davis. I'm an assistant programmer here at Outfest. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. And I can't wait for you to get to meet our filmmakers and also to continue to check out more shorts blocks from Outfest. It'll be playing all week long on our virtual platform. So I'm going to start off with Wishes, which is directed by Amy Jenkins and features her son Adam. Thank you so much for being here. Amy, I would just love to kind of know, when you first started recording this, were you recording this from the mindset of a mom, just like, oh, it's my kid's birthday, or or was it more of a filmmaker mindset, like, oh, this is going to be a project over time?
That's a great question. Honestly, I really started it more as a mom filming her kid. I'm a visual artist, and filmmaking is something I've come to later in life. So I've always been comfortable with the camera, but and I love documenting my family. But I really didn't think about this as a project until, honestly, quite recently, when I spoke to Adam about how he would feel about doing this together. And so we combed back through years of footage, and saw that this amazing home movie stuff really showed the evolution of a personhood. And so we are now working on a feature film together, which will be done in 2023, called Adam's Apple.
Oh, great.
Yeah, and it kind of jumps off where Wishes, it starts where Wishes leaves off, essentially.
Right.
Now we're working with more, intentionality.
Okay, that's awesome. And how long again was the span of this this project? How many years did it take, or the film from?
Wishes was about 10 years.
Oh,
I
wow.
started
5 to
from 5 to 15.
15.
Adam, what was that like, looking through that past footage, and how did that make you feel?
Well, I mean, when I was being filmed, I didn't know that it was gonna be in a movie, but
Right.
I like it being in a movie. Looking back at it, it's really interesting just seeing how I developed. Obviously, there are some feelings that I think, teenager or just everyone gets when they look at footage of them and they're like, oh, I look so awful. And
Right.
horrible. But no, I am actually really proud of how it turned out and how I turned out, how I developed. So
Yeah.
it's
And
really
I'd love to know, because you said you're making a feature kind of where this falls off, and called Adam's Apple. And actually, when I was rewatching this, I really loved that moment, Adam, where you're talking about, that's such a masculine trait, and that's something that you would really like. And I'm wondering, has your perspective around, masculinity changed since that was recorded? Like, do you still feel that way? Are you still, looking to have those kinds of traits for yourself?
Yeah, that's a super interesting question. I definitely, my expression of my gender has definitely changed a lot. And I think especially I'm doing testosterone shots now. So before I transitioned and essentially went through boy puberty, it was like a really, really big deal for me to pass like completely as traditionally masculine because I didn't really want anyone knowing my gender that I was assigned. Um, so I would never wear like nail polish or
Oh,
ring.
nice.
An Adam's apple. I would never wear pink. Like that was out of the question. All of those stereotypical gender roles. But as I transitioned and started to become more masculine in my voice and face and how people just perceive me. And as I started to develop like learning through school or through my own education about gender roles, about stereotypes, all of that, I've definitely changed. I mean, now I obviously do wear rings and nail
Yeah.
polish, and I'm fine with pink. And I don't think Adam's apple is such a big
Yeah,
deal.
that's really
All of that
interesting.
is just superficial, and I've realized that.
Yeah. And Amy, my last question for y'all is just, do you still record Adam every birthday with the what do you want to be when you grow up question?
Uh, honestly, yes. Because he's still developing his personhood, and it's just such an interesting kind of uh, perspective to see somebody changing over a durational amount of time.
Right.
But Adam has also picked up the camera and is doing a lot of filming
Oh,
himself now for our project.
oh,
So that's an exciting development.
that's awesome. Well, I cannot wait to see what Adam's apple turns out to be in the future, 2023. Thank y'all so much. I'm gonna go over now to Joy Child. We have a few people from the film. We have the director Aurora. Um, Hello, and Eloise, and I'm sorry, do you mind saying your name, Eloise, Eloise mom?
Sure, Tanisa, hi.
Tanisa, thank you so much for being here. And Joy Child is so beautiful and brings tears to my eyes almost every time I watch it. Aurora, I'd love to start with you and just how did you meet Eloise and the other kids in the film? And how did you decide on this conversation between child and parent as what you wanted to ground your film with?
Yeah, for sure. And thank you for saying that. It kind of like brings tears to my eyes too when I watch it. So, how did I meet Eloise and the other children? So I'm an MFA student at Stanford and getting my MFA in documentary film. And so I'm located in the Bay, and there's a play group for like parents of gender expansive kids and the children called Rainbow Families. And I ended up sort of in this very kind of stalkerish way, like finding this group and being like, please, 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 and trying to make this film. Like I actually sort of like approached them in person and they're probably a little freaked out. Yeah, and explaining who I was and, asking if there were any parents and children in this play group that might be interested in participating in a film. And that's how I ended up getting in touch with all of the parents and kids that ended up participating. And yeah, and so I sort of like I came to this film to begin with because my partner had recently come out to me as trans, and I was sort of struggling with my feelings with that and with how to like accept that. And so I was really interested in exploring like what does a really beautiful and unconditionally loving response to that disclosure look like. And I think that Ellie and Tanisa embodied that so beautifully, and it was just like such an incredible honor to be able to meet them and get really close with their family and witness this beautiful conversation that they had.
Yeah, and Eloise and Tanisa, that conversation is really, really beautiful and touching. And I guess you recorded that after some time had passed from the initial conversation, or, how did that look?
Yeah, so first we just met to sort of discuss. I know this is like an extremely vulnerable thing to do. I met with a lot of different parents and kids and reached out to a lot of them, and a lot of parents were not comfortable with it because they didn't want to potentially expose their children to some kind of ridicule or whatever it might be. It's just like it's a very potentially dangerous thing to do. So first we met and just sort of discussed where I was coming from and what their story was and what their family's comfort level was and what Eloise's comfort level was and everything. And then we did all the shooting for the film, which was kind of intense because we shot it on a Bolex like 16 millimeter film camera, which is really hard to do. And like, it'd be hard for anyone. And it's super hard when you're a kid with like tons of energy. And we shot one of the scenes on Halloween, the moment with like painting the nose.
That's what that was. Okay.
Yes.
weren't there because my siblings went trick-or-treating and I was staying in the house.
Yeah, I felt really bad.
Everybody outside. Oh my
Remember, though,
goodness.
that the real hero of this filming, as much as Eloise was very patient, Aurora spent most of that night standing in our bathtub, in our tiny little bathroom,
Right.
trying to get the angle,
Yeah,
trying to
like,
figure it out. So as much as Eloise and I were patient, Aurora was a rock star that evening.
Yeah, 2 seconds of footage was like hours in a bathroom. So it looks, it was wild. But so we ended up having the conversation was the very last thing that we recorded. And so I
Okay.
feel like at that point, we all kind of had come to know each other a little bit better. But yeah, but really it's just like, it was just a real honor to be able to be there for that really
Yeah.
vulnerable.
And Eloise and Tanisa, it is a very emotional conversation. Do you still get emotional when you watch this? And how has y'all's relationship kind of evolved since then?
What do you think, Eloise? Do you want to start or should I?
You start.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, I don't watch it very often because it's very emotional. We were very lucky to be able to see it for the first time at a big screening at Stanford. And it was a very overwhelming moment, yeah, to see and hear what Aurora had made of us on a big screen. We saw each other afterward and actually had to walk away from each other because it was so emotional. I really started to cry on her and she started to cry on me, and we took a little break and came back and had hors d'oeuvres and it was fine.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes as a parent, you know, you might have sort of a big initial disclosure conversation, but the way that we run our family is we kind of take things as they come, and we don't necessarily have a real formal sit down, let us discuss the following aspects of your gender and your relationship to your family in relation to your gender. So we had never really had some of those conversations, and so it was really pretty incredible for me as your parent to just sit back and listen as Aurora asked these deep questions, and as I got to hear my kid speak your mind from a really considered and very honest place. So it's been very emotional from start to finish for me.
Yeah. Eloise, any thoughts you'd like to say?
Mom,
What's that?
I told you not to be embarrassing.
Sorry. My job as the mom of a 9-year-old is to be at least a little embarrassing every day. Sorry, honey. Sorry.
Eloise, I just love to know, you kind of touched on that self-doubt you initially had, I'm just a little kid, what would I know? What really gave you the kind of push to really embrace who you are?
I don't know. There's a kid at our church who is trans, and he is pretty awesome in that because I had known for like a few years that I was not a girl, but I didn't have, I thought I shouldn't say it because I thought my parents would say no to it. But when I met Samson, I guess another door opened up.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, thank you all so much for sharing your story. That Joy Child. Pardon?
A quick question for Aurora.
Oh, yeah.
Why did you change the name?
Why did I change the name? That's a great question. So this film used to have a different title. It was called "I Thought I Wasn't Ready," which is a line from the film. But then, like just about a couple of weeks ago, a parent of a gender expansive child who I'd reached out to like 9 months ago about the film and never responded to me, got back to me, and we sparked up a conversation. She told me that Joy Child was sort of like the gender neutral term that she uses to refer to her child. And instead of like son or daughter, she calls them Joy Child. And so I just found I thought it was such a really beautiful term, and somehow it really spoke to me, and so that's why I changed the name. But I love I Thought I Wasn't Ready too. I think they're both really nice titles.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. So I'm going to move on to Royalty, which is co-directed by Sav and Logan. Do y'all want to introduce yourselves?
Yeah, sure. I'm Sav Souza. I use they, them pronouns, and I'm in Washington Heights, New York right now.
I'm Logan. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm in Brooklyn, New York.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being with us. So I read that this film was by the Young Actors Theater Camp, and I was wondering if y'all could explain a little bit about how that works and how did you make this movie during the duration of a camp and how that all came together?
Yes, we absolutely did make it during the duration of a camp. And it wasn't a summer camp, it was a winter camp, which takes place in that sacred little time between Christmas and going back to school. So we break up into little blocks of filming, and we have such limited daylight because we're actually in the mountains near Santa Cruz. So we have probably, 4 hours a day to shoot. And I think we had about 5 days of shooting on this, including a dance scene with about 100 kids, which we got done in, I think, an hour. I think we did it. But yeah, within the confines of this sort of like challenge, we've been going there, both of us, since I was 14, and Sav, since you were how old?
I was 9 when I started being a camper at the Young Actors Theater Camp, and
Wow.
I've worked there ever since I turned 18 and hopped on staff. So it's been like amazing, and this place is like a place for fostering young artists, regardless of their identities. Like, we both were just baby queers figuring out our identities there. I figured out my queerness, my transness, and like how to be an artist there. And so like to get to create a film about being a young non-binary person was like a really awesome full circle moment for us.
That's awesome. And so did you create this film with the participation of the students or the campers? Like you all together decide kind of how you want the story to go? Or?
The input of the campers is huge. Some of the films are written by students, some are assistant directed by students, some are shot by students. Ours, Sav actually and I started talking in September or something, the year of winter camp, and we were bouncing off ideas, and then Sav wrote a script. Do you want to take it from there?
Yeah, we've been kind of seeing over the past couple of years that we've been getting more gender expansive students in at camp, and so we wanted to represent that in the films that we were creating, and me especially as like a trans member of the staff wanted to like be helping foster that space, and so we like came up with this awesome idea, and then we knew like the camper that we had in mind for the roles. Like, that's really helpful for us. We get to like kind of know who we're going into and kind of shape the stories and characters around who we have. And so we were able to shape it around this incredible actor named Leia, who plays the main character in our film. And we knew that they had like this energy that was just gonna be perfect. So we were able to really like dive into that and really harness that.
That's awesome, because I was wondering how you created the character of Jax, because Leia just feels so natural, and like that's just who they are. And so I'm assuming it was a really close collaboration with your lead actor then.
Yeah, it absolutely was. They're like honestly like a mini me. Like, I feel like had I like had the language and like knowledge of gender and everything that I had in high school, like we would be the same human being.
That's the other thing I wanted to ask, because they're so smart, and so they just know exactly how to break things down at that age, and I definitely wasn't there at that age. And so I'm wondering, did you kind of want this to be like a precocious child, or do you think that this is, I don't even know, is this how high schoolers do? They just know so much more now because we actually have this language to use?
I think they absolutely know. I mean, the kids that come to camp, especially kids like Leia, who have known who they are, who have been out and non-binary for years before I even knew I was queer, before my parents knew, they and their friends all like worship each other and love each other's strangeness and queerness, and they're taught not only to respect it, but how to expand on it in respectful ways in terms of like vocabulary, just in basic respect every single day. And we've learned, especially through camp, these kids, given the space and the tools, will flourish. It's just the social structures that are still outdated, which is why none of the kids in the film actually have an issue with Jax running outside the bounds of queen or king.
Right.
It's just structure exists, and we think we're supposed to respect it for that reason.
Right. Yeah, that's so cool. Yeah, I really love that. And I was just like, wow, I wish I, had all these people to, back in my day who could have taught me all of this. And I guess the last question I have for y'all, you kind of just touched a little bit about it, that, what do you hope that, maybe stories like this or other stories can help with schools, like how they can break down the binary? Because so much of it is the school is set on a binary. So like, what do you hope, I don't know, that schools can start to do just to break down those binaries?
That's a great question. I think schools are, specifically high schools and colleges, are like so rooted in tradition and like these ideas of like prom king, prom queen, homecoming, like all these different things, like superlatives, like there's always, everything is gendered, and like the way everything happens, like girls tree, like Sadie Hawkins, like those things, it's all so gendered.
Yeah.
So if we like start from the bottom and we strip back all of that stuff and like think about like what those qualifiers are doing to actually like damage us and limit our growth, because like this is like high school is and college and like younger, obviously, as we're seeing from these incredible young like friends here, like this is like the prime time to be giving kids the space to grow and pulling back as many like layers and labels as we can, so that way they can find the ones that fit for them, not the ones that we're forcing onto them.
Yeah.
So I think like pulling back like the rules, and like right now there's a lot of conversation around trans kids playing sports in high school and in college and stuff, and like keeping that conversation going and figuring out like how we're going to support these trans kids through that time.
Because clearly, as we see just with this Q&A, the kids know what they're talking about. It's not like, well, thank you so much. I really enjoyed your short, and I hope Leah gets to also, see it and gets all the praise as well. So thank you.
So much.
I'm going to go to Go Boy if they are here. Oriana. Let's see. Oriana. Oh no. She's not here. Okay, well, maybe oh no, there you are. Hi, Oriana. Sorry, I didn't see you there.
Okay.
How are you doing?
Great, how are you guys?
Good, thank you. So director of Go Boy, thank you for being here. This was at Outfest Fusion, I think, as well, was it?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I saw it there first.
Yeah.
So I just want to know two things first. Why set this in 1990 and why wrestling?
Okay, they kind of go hand in hand.
Okay.
For anyone who grew up in like the 80s and 90s, we remember when it was WWF and it was Hulk Hogan, and like that was it. So wrestling is an interesting sport. It's very macho, and yet it's also a little gay. Like it's big, muscly, oily men wrestling each other in tiny, tiny underwear, and I just think it's hilarious. So, when I found the script and read it, I was like, this is, just perfect. It's just perfect. And then the 1989, 1990 connection was, that was a time when there was no social media, and I really did want to strip this film down a bit so that we didn't have that noise. And you can imagine if the story is so like intense and we're rooting for Bobby so much when it's stripped down, imagine now when you've got so many kids that are surrounded by social media, and just how much stronger that that pressure is. So I wanted to play with both of those elements.
Awesome. Well, yeah, and kind of like you mentioned, it's kind of hyper masculine but also weirdly gay at the same time, and so I love that you kind of explore that, and Bobby both wanting to have those masculine qualities, but then also like posing as well, I thought was an interesting choice.
Yeah, I think, and it goes by pretty quickly, but he finds a flyer for exotic dancers, and, he's like 12, so he doesn't really know what they are, but they're kind of similar to the wrestlers. They're naked and oily and muscly, but he kind of likes what they're doing more. So you're taking like what attracted him to wrestling and translating it into a world that he can step into and finally find himself.
That's really cool. Yeah, and I just want to give a shout out to your lead actor, who's played by Marcus Owens, I believe.
Yes.
And did he the sequence in the ring, which is all fantasy in his mind, was that choreographed? Was that improvised? His movement is really lovely, and I just kind of love to know a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so Marcus studied at the Chicago Multicultural Dance Center, and he had a choreographer. His name is Deriqua Tours, who was an amazing dancer during his career. He danced with Alvin Ailey and got recognized by the city of Chicago for his work to AIDS. He's an incredible person, and now what he does, now that he's further along in his career, is he focuses on teaching dance to kids that otherwise would be on the streets or at risk. And so we went through, a lot of rehearsals with both of them. And one of them, we actually went to their rehearsal space on the south side of Chicago. And I don't know how much, you guys are familiar with Chicago or like what's been in the news, but it's an area that, doesn't always give the same opportunities to children as children get on the north side. That's the history of our city, is very segregated. So the fact that he kind of recognized that and took his passion and decided to pass that on to a new generation to keep them safe and to give them something that they can feel good about is just incredibly inspiring, especially when it comes to LGBTQ youth. He recognizes that that's an extremely at-risk group, especially people of color. And so for him to do that and to be able to bring that into the film was an incredible journey for everybody involved, and it was able to watch the rehearsals and able to watch the shooting of that.
That's awesome. So yeah, I mean, I feel like, I hope there are lots of Bobbies out there, who get to watch this. And what do you have planned for your next project? Anything? Do you still want to explore themes of masculinity and queerness?
Yeah, I think one of the big things for me, when I was growing up, I went to high school in the early 90s. And, when I showed up to a dance with a girl, I was immediately turned away. And that I didn't even know what to do with that. Things are so different now. There are so many places where kids can go and identify with others that are like them. And so I'm not sure if it's masculinity necessarily that I want to investigate, but I do want to look at kind of a retrospective of what kids from earlier generations had to go through and how that's progressed. Because it's so easy for younger kids to not understand that history and to not understand that there were a lot of kids that never had a voice that they had. And how do we use that voice in a positive way?
Yeah. Well, I love that you gave a voice to Bobby. So thank you so much. And please, tell Marcus that he's awesome and keep shining. Thank you. I'm going to move on to Were You Gay in High School? I believe we have co-writers and director Nikki. Do y'all want to introduce yourselves?
Yeah, sure. I'm Nikki Young. I was the co-writer and director of Were You Gay in High School.
And I'm Karen Du, the co-writer and DP of Were You Gay in High School.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here. And I loved how conversational this piece was. And, we start in the car and it's just like, it's just so friendly and familiar. And was this actually based on a real conversation y'all had? And did it kind of play out similarly to how this plays out in the film?
Yeah, so the baseline for the script was like a pretty candid conversation between Karen and I. And we were like, let's just kind of write some stuff down. Let's throw it out, see what happens. And then we were kind of like, great, we did this thing. We're going to like put it in a drawer and forget about it. But then we started talking to some producers about just some projects. And they were like, oh, that sounds interesting. Like I listened to that conversation. I'd watch that film that literally starts with us being like, were you gay in high school? And like for people who are like closeted in high school, the answer is like, well, yeah, but also like, no, And so it was like a very interesting conversation. Karen and I have known each other as adults and we've been out the whole time, but then to be like, what was that like for you in high school? What did you do? What didn't you do? I think Oriana put it really interestingly as like how it changed so drastically generation after generation, especially now. So like the things that we had to do, the things we had to hide.
Yeah.
Ended up being a really fun conversation for us.
Yeah, because you also have like text messages in your film, but there's also some more like old school elements as well, which is fun. And I like the animation aspect too. It felt very high school. Was that something that you had in your mind when you initially were talking about this?
Yeah, it had kind of naturally weaved itself into the conversation that we had, because some of the stuff that we brought up just it very much embodies like a weird teen feelings, because when you're closeted in high school, like when you have a crush, you can't tell anyone, so you're just like left alone to process. And a lot of the times really weird stuff comes from it, and I think that's kind of what came out of our conversation. And like very odd animation, like we have an animated like Paul Blart, and we have like 2 to 3 different types of cats, and it just like felt right. And I think it ended up looking amazing. Karen, if you want to chime in that.
Yeah, like a big reason why we decided to make it partially animated, partially live action was that we really wanted to utilize the animation as a way to express kind of like exaggerated feelings. And again, like things that you can't say out loud when you're still closeted in high school. So that's kind of how we wanted to use the animation, and we worked with 2 amazing animators. Sarah I'm sorry, I can never
Sarah
say
Gonas-Dertier and Amanda Bonato. They're fantastic.
But it was so cool to working with 2 different animators and to see the way that they also collaborated with each other.
Yeah, and talking about like pairs of 2, like your 2 main characters kind of, they balance each other out a little bit. Like, was that something you kind of had to go back and make sure they had enough distinction between them, or is that actually just like from y'all's personal experiences? One is kind of, you know, she's already married, and the other one still feels a little bit like she's figuring it out, kind of.
Yeah, we're just gonna give ourselves away here. I am married, and it is like we really didn't have to. We did do a lot of kind of work on the script in terms of making it a story in itself and not just like a conversation. But the way we cast our actors, you know, Sierra Pugh and Alex Song just slipped into it so naturally and so easily. And then it was funny even just them talking to each other about their experiences, because they're both queer as well. So, you know, the fact that this kind of opened up a lot of different conversations for like everybody who worked on this was a really wonderful experience.
I feel like this film made me want to ask all my friends, like, were you?
Great.
I guess just my last question, kind of like not like an it gets better thing, because, you know, that's, but like more like, what would you tell to like, you know, your former high school selves? Like, you know, I don't know, would you show them this film so they would figure it out?
Yeah, Karen, you should answer that first.
I mean, I think throughout this whole process, we've talked a lot about who we are as adults right now and who we were back then. And I think going back to what Oriana was saying, like, there's such a different experience with youth now and when we were in high school, which we're in our late 20s, early 30s now. So it is really just like looking back on the things that you thought were so important and so meaningful and so scary, but being in a better place now. And that is a privilege to be able to say that as well. But, you know, I think the fun part of this movie is that we get to travel back in time and we get to reminisce, and, you know, everyone loves nostalgia and like, you know, revisiting old cell phones and things like that. So,
well, y'all pulled it off really well. It's really fun and like cringy, and it hits all those elements of high school. So great job. And I just want to thank you all for participating. Really love this block. I feel like I want all the kids across the world to see this. So please, you know, tell everyone to watch, and continue to check out the rest of Outfest online. Thank you.
Thanks so much.